Hello, everyone. As you heard, my current name is Michael Small, but after tonight, you may want to use my new name, which is the man who destroyed America. I didn't feel this way even a month ago. This is a new feeling. Up until recently, I was kind of proud of all the things I'd done, particularly my work as an idealistic investigative journalist for People magazine. And in that role, I did some really pretty wonderful things. For instance, you are looking at the person who inspired a rapper known as Vanilla Ice to pull down his pants and reveal a tiny red scar on his right buttocks. That was a big scoop. And I'm also the person who followed Winona Ryder and Johnny Depp into a movie theater, wrote down all the candy that they ordered, including a bag of red Twizzlers. Pretty amazing. But my biggest coup was a cover story. I was responsible for helping to transform someone who really had no discernible talent into one of a personage so famous that he is known around the world only by his first name. And that person, of course, is the Italian stallion, the king of romance, the I can't believe it's not butter spokesmodel, the muscle man with the long blonde tresses, Fabio. Now, it is true, I was actually the Boswell to Fabio's Dr. Johnson. And I don't want to exaggerate, I never actually saw Fabio's Johnson. But it did have a tremendous, huge, enormous role in what followed. So it all started back in 1993 when the LA Bureau of People magazine received this massive press kit saying that they were ushering in a new age of romance. And the Jesus of this new religion was Fabio. This was because he had appeared as the model on the cover of many, many romance novels, and they used this to hail him as the international icon of romance. Everyone at People magazine found this hysterically funny, so of course I was sent off to go meet Fabio's manager. Peter Paul was his name, and he was kind of gruff guy with a black beard and a kind of gravelly voice. And as soon as I got there, he started, hurling all this stuff at me about romance and Fabio, how this was a new age. And after about 10 minutes, I couldn't take it anymore. So I just said, I'm sorry, we're done here. There's no story, we can't do this. And then something happened that I hadn't prepared for, which is that he just didn't miss a beat. He started in with his pitch again, but he made a small adjustment. This time he was smiling, so I started smiling. And then he started laughing, so I started laughing. And then I thought, oh, I get it. He's in on the joke. There is a story here. So about a few weeks later, I'm on assignment. I'm in a giant stretched limo rolling through Los Angeles with Peter Paul and Fabio. And nothing that happens makes any sense at all. Like the limo pulls up in front of a TV studio, and out comes Ellen DeGeneres, who was not famous at the time. She gets in the limo, she chats with us for 10 minutes, and she leaves. Bye, Ellen, whoever you are. Then we move onward. We go to meet Stan Lee of Marvel Comics, and it's like a photo opportunity. Look. It's Stan Lee and the Incredible Hunk. And then we move on. We go to a place that's supposed to be Fabio's favorite haunt called Club Tattoo. And at Club Tattoo, could I be California Dreaming? Or is that Michelle Phillips or the Mamas and the Papas over there? And if it is, what's she doing here on such a non-winter's day? But in fact, it is. And when I'm wondering why all this happened, there's one answer. It's right in front of me. Peter Paul. Everything that we are doing and seeing is part of his master plan. Everything. So he knows Ellen's about to get a talk show, so we visit her. He happens to have a little business deal with his best friend from Marvel Comics, Mr. Liddy. And then Club Tattoo, I believe I read that he has some sort of stake in Club Tattoo. So it's all stuff he wants to get into People magazine, and that's where I come in. So basically, he realizes that he has the drug that will control me, and that drug is access to Fabio. So he gives it to me, big time. I mean, I had the kind of access you would not believe. Day after day, morning to night, I am with Fabio and Peter Paul. I go with Fabio to see him eat his 5 egg white omelets at his favorite restaurant on the Sunset Strip every morning. I go and lift weights with Fabio. I go to his bachelor pad in the Hollywood Hills, and they let me look at every little tiny detail, and it is suspiciously looking like they rented that house just for my story, but whatever. And I even get, this is it, they put me on a plane, and I go to Maui for the shoot for Fabio's pinup calendar. Day after day of this, I'm there with my notepad scribbling things down while Fabio's hanging from like jungle vines. And you know, this has kind of a surprising effect on an idealistic investigative celebrity journalist, which is that I start to like them. I mean, I start to have fun with Peter, Paul, and Fabio. I mean, it's despite myself, but like, you know, there could be worse things than tooling around LA with like this you know, gentle giant who kind of smells of grooming products and this sort of, you know, salesman who kind of smells of snake oil, and so like, you know, I find it fun when they're like, they ogle all the girls outside the limo, like, oh, look at that one, and then they also like to talk a lot about their odd couple relationships, like, hey Peter, we're so close, people think we're gay, but you're not my type. Ha ha ha. Lots of laughter with that one. And I am not the only one who falls under their spell. I'm telling you, everywhere we go, people have a great time when Peter, Paul, and Fabio show up. Like, women are rubbing Fabio's thighs and pretending to have orgasms, and men are rubbing women's thighs and pretending they're Fabio, and we go to some morning talk show that Fabio's on, and this actress who's approximately 30 years older than me pushes me into a corner and says, what do I have to do to get in People magazine? What is it? What is it? You want a blowjob? And I'm like, that's not the most appealing offer I've ever had. However, I have to say, in 15 years of working for People magazine, that was the only offer of its kind I ever had. And this is the kind of magic that Peter, Paul, and Fabio could work. So you might start to wonder, did I get the dirt on Fabio? And I did find out one thing, which is that this you know, romantic Man of Steel did have a kryptonite, which was that he'd be like, you know, flirting with this gaggle of women who are all screaming, and then he'd get in the limo and his face would fall and he'd go, oh, Michael, I'm so tired. So tired. It's hard, very hard. It's very, very hard. And so as part of this, he made a rule. Every day at 5 p.m., Fabio had to have a nap. And so these were sort of special kind of nap, because I went to visit him after his nap, and I saw next to his bed tiny pair of women's clogs. And, you know, you can draw your own conclusions. But then, when we were in Maui, I sort of, you know, I'm an investigative journalist, I staked out his suite in the Maui hotel, and I see this, like, you know, a little large, middle-aged woman in a lot of sparkly clothing banging on his door, going like, Fabio, I need you, Fabio! And the door opens a crack, and a hand reaches out, and the woman goes in. And, you know, no wonder why the guy's tired. So, anyway, there's one thing that I did not see. I did not see this when I was with Fabio, and that is romance. You know, even when he told me about his long-lost love of his life, he admitted that he had cheated on her. And I should have called New York and said, we got to cancel this story. It's a hoax. There's no age of romance. Fabio cheated on his girlfriend. But unfortunately, you know, I liked him. And so I saw him tell this story, and like my heart went out. He seemed so pitiful, you know. And I thought, you know, that woman's terrible. I mean, she should understand. Fabio's the king of romance. He has to spread his love around. Fabio has to cheat. But you know, this was a more innocent time. It was just before the internet. You couldn't look up skeletons in people's closets. You really couldn't. So you know, one thing that happened is that I found this article that seemed to indicate, it was like in some Miami business paper, and it seemed to indicate that Peter Paul had some kind of legal problem or financial, something weird. And you know, in those days, the only thing I could have done was to get a reporter to go to the courts in Miami to follow through and get it, or I could just go to the source, because there was Peter Paul with me all day. So I went to Peter Paul and I said, you know, I found this weird thing, and what's the story with that? And he said, he started laughing. He was like, oh, you don't care about that. Oh, no, that's in the past. Who needs that? And this is about Fabio. It's about romance. What does that have to do with romance? No, you don't need that. And I thought, well, it is kind of off the track. You know, why would I spend the time going chasing that? So I let it go. Yes, I let it go. And that cover story was published, and a lot of millions of people read it. And one of the happy readers was Peter Paul. In fact, he gave me a great honor. He asked me to ghostwrite Fabio's biography. This masterful, probably 65-page tome, which bore Peter Paul's name on it, was the highest paid gig of my life. I worked maybe 2 to 3 weeks. They gave me something like $10,000, paid me right on time. Everybody was happy and we were done. Except about 15 years later, maybe everybody wasn't so happy, because I was driving in a rental car and I was playing around with the stations, and I hear a familiar voice, like kind of gravelly, and I think, Peter Paul. And then I hear another voice, which is like Italian accented, Fabio. Only this time it's not like 5th grade banter. Fabio is saying something like, I think he's saying like, you know, he's thinking that Peter Paul cheated him. And Peter Paul is saying that he did everything for Fabio. Fabio did nothing without him. And at one point, it reaches this climax where Peter Paul says, who got you People magazine? I got you People magazine. I did that. I got you Michael Small. And, you know, for an idealistic investigative journalist, it doesn't feel so good to hear that kind of thing. You know, you kind of think, like, did I get used? And you don't feel so good about that, but you know, the past is the past, so I decided I'm just going to move on. You know, I'm going to keep going forward and just forget about that. Until, you know, I don't know why, in a whim, about a few weeks ago, I thought, you know, I want to check up on my old friend Peter Paul and see if maybe he and Fabio got back together again and things, you know, patched up. And so I look on Wikipedia and I call up Peter Paul's page, and I mean, I catch my breath. I gasp. My heart skips a beat, because there, in great detail in print, is that little legal detail that I had not followed up on. And what I learned is this. Before Peter Paul was hanging out with Fabio and me, he was extremely busy in prison. And I mean prison, not jail, by the way. And he had masterminded something called the Cuban Coffee Caper, where he attempted to defraud Cuba out of about $8.75 million or something like that. And then, of course, along with that, there was the possession of cocaine with the intent to sell, and the attempt to escape America using a name of a dead man to go to Canada. No, there was that. But then, after that, there was more. Because after the whole Fabio phase, Peter Paul went back to prison. This time for manipulating stock, if I understand, one of those financial things, manipulating stock for a little company he formed with his best friend, I should say former best friend, Stan Lee of Marvel Comics. And you think that was enough, but there's not. There's more, unfortunately. In 2001, Peter Paul, this is the hard part, Peter Paul sponsored a celebrity fundraiser for Hillary Clinton, and it ended in a financial scandal. And he was so angry with Hillary Clinton that he spent years, maybe 7 years, producing articles, videos, interviews, saying that she was crooked Hillary. And I got a little hunch, so I then did a search for Crooked Hillary, Peter Paul, and yes, during the election, they used his Crooked Hillary stuff, the Crooked Hillary people, to make Hillary look bad. And I thought, one more thing I'm going to check, so I went to Peter Paul's website. He created his own wiki page, and actually in there he repeated all these same things that I'd seen on Wikipedia, but he just tried to present them in a way that made them okay, which all I can say is, Peter Paul, come on. And then, of course, I had to look up one more thing, which is Fabio. And I looked up Fabio, and of course, there were no surprises. He had appeared in approximately maybe 18 TV shows and 7 movies, and each time his role was listed as himself. But there was one more thing, and this was the thing that did me in, because Alternet had written an article about where Fabio spent his last Thanksgiving. Guess where? A place called Mar-a-Lago. Yes, Fabio has a new friend, and he goes by the name of Donald. And at that party, Fabio was asked, who should be our Secretary of State? So I just have to ask all of you, what if I had reported on that little detail? You know, would Hillary, the little Peter Paul's little back detail, would Hillary be president now? And what if I hadn't written that story about Fabio? Would somebody else be choosing our Secretary of State? So I have to say, as a former idealistic, investigative celebrity journalist, I bow my head in shame. I have failed you. I am sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you.